Today, where we have with us Anish Mandal, partner at Deloitte, to talk to us about new energy and what that will hold in terms of expectations. What are the gaps there? What should one expect in the budget 2026? Anish, talk to us about that. Talk to us about where the gaps currently are when new energy is concerned. Uh, are the gaps solar, wind? Should storage be the priority? Should green hydrogen be the priority? Grid infra? What should budget 2026 prioritize according to you?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a privilege to speak to it. Um, so there have been, of course, a slew of incentives provided by Government of India already in several of these areas. We already have 19,500 crores of PLI given to solar. We also have 5,000 crores of VGF provided to BESS. So all of that is there. What I feel is the priority would be to kind of provide incentives around localization of manufacturing in some of these areas, right? So government is, of course, actively looking at PLI and localization of some of the components. Particularly so, say, for example, in solar glass, we already have PLI for the entire value chain, more from the module cells, ingots, wafers, and polysilicon. But if you can look at feasibility around providing incentives in solar glass manufacturing, that could be one. Grid infrastructure in the HVDC area is, of course, one of the priority areas which the government is probably identified. So that's also something which we are expecting that, yeah, some PLI is going to come in the localization of some of these areas.
Anish, hi, good afternoon. You've spoken about the BESS adoption, but how urgent is energy storage for integrating renewables, and what should the budget 2026 prioritize to accelerate this BESS adoption?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So I think, see, in a renewables world, in that sense, whenever the renewables penetration is beyond a significant percentage, which is more than 20%, we'll have more and more use cases or more and more value created by the battery storage, right, or pump storage, whichever way. And as per Government of India's target or CEA's target, we need more than 200 gigawatt hour of battery storage in the grid by 2032. And at different kind of, we already have initiated quite many tenders, quite many opportunities at various stages of bidding. But we require more such battery storage installations for sure. As I said, for localization, we already have a 10 gigawatt hour of PLI, which is there. So that needs to progress. So that's there for some time. We haven't really progressed. So the government is making an effort to progress on that. So that's one. Second is for battery installations as well. I think we already have a successful kind of VGF scheme. If that could be extended, of course, then there is a definite push towards battery being added as a part of renewables as well. So yeah, I think we are expecting some kind of a support more from a VGF perspective to roll out so that we have more battery in the system.
Okay. And what policy support is needed to make renewables dispatchable, reliable at scale, rather than just capacity additive?
Right. I think that's a larger reform in that sense. We already have, say, renewables as a must run. But beyond a substantial amount of energy coming from renewables, and if that becomes must run, then of course, I would say there could be issues around grid flexibility. So to make it dispatchable, there is a larger reform which is required, that how renewables can participate through the market, right? So if we can schedule the renewables to the market and dispatch the renewables to the market, that becomes, of course, one of the, I would say, the progressive reforms which probably the other Western countries have, right? So, for example, in US, some of the ISOs itself So the entire renewables is actually scheduled and dispatched to the market. And as in when you schedule and dispatch to the market, it becomes dispatchable. So that's one of the, of course, the policy reforms which we'll look at.
Okay, and while we're talking about reforms, also talk to us about what measures should be introduced to boost the execution and success rate of schemes like the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, PM Kusum. Now, we're hearing that the PM Kusum might have an extension since it's expiring later this year. Talk to us about what are your expectations on that front?
The budget has, of course, provisioned um, uh, a considerable amount of resources in expanding both these schemes. It's more execution challenges which we are facing, right? And some of the nuances could be around, say, more of accelerated rollout of smart metering infrastructure, AMI, right? Which helps in the net metering aspects as well. Or say, for example, linking of the DISCOM incentives, which is somewhere around 5,000 crores to net installed capacity and not necessarily on registrations. Or say, for example, the utility-led aggregation schemes, which is ULA for consumers which are less than typically 2 kilowatt, right? And that needs to be incentivized. So therefore, two mechanisms. So one, it goes for a state budget and state incentives, and then there is a MNRE fund which kicks in. But if there could be budgetary provisions around ULA-led schemes, then it could be an accelerated deployment in both these schemes, right? So that's something which could look at.
Um, what should Budget 2026 prioritize to balance energy security, affordability, and India's clean energy transition goals? How should one balance that?
Primarily, all these are interrelated in that sense. So if you are focused, if the country's focus is around localization of manufacturing, it automatically, as I said, increases affordability and as well as increases energy security. And more from the perspective of assured domestic, I would say, offtake in that sense, right? So if you have a 40 gigawatt of solar or renewables target, which the government of India is targeting somewhere around 50 gigawatt going forward itself every year, and that target is only going to increase, right? So therefore, there requires a local manufacturing capacity to support that capacity as well, right? So more from that perspective, I would say the budget and government of India would focus on localization of various elements of the value chain in these segments, including, as I said, solar, wind, battery storage, green infrastructure. So that's my expectations from this budget 2026.
You work with industry all the time. Give us a sense on what the typical PLF with regard to solar and wind is. The understanding is it's around 30%. Is that right, in around the 30% region?
Yes, and of course the solar would be a little lower, and wind is a little higher. But on a weighted average basis, if you put solar and wind, I think standalone solar and standalone wind, it's somewhere around 30%. But I guess the way the country is adding resources is also on a hybrid basis. So there are opportunities around hybridizing solar and wind itself, or solar battery and wind itself. So that provides a CUF or a PLF in that sense, upwards of 60%, 70%, or even 80% in a year, right? So therefore, that the discoms or the distribution utilities are adopting quite naturally in all their new procurements.
Anish, great chatting with you today. Thanks for joining us and thanks for your insight as well.
Thank you.